Hi, it's Xanthe here. It's just after midday. I'm just trying to get ready for work. It takes me a long time to do things, so I've managed to have a shower, I've had breakfast. I'm just going to put some light makeup on, which I'll do while I'm talking here. And see if I can multitask, right? And then I will just try and get my work done, which is just a very easy job for a few hours. I've got everything laid out so that I can try and talk and do something at the same time. And I wanted to talk in this video about why I no longer identify as autistic, despite being psychiatrist words, definitely on the spectrum, clinical significant autism spectrum features. Oh, I think I like to do it this way better. That he thinks, I've got a big scar there from a skin cancer surgery, just in case you're wondering. Just lots of hyperpigmentation, just a bit of concealer. What was I saying? Oh. Even though I score high on tests, he still thinks I'm threshold to ASD, but I'm diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, PDD, NOS, which is still actually a current diagnosis in New Zealand, same with Asperger's syndrome. Because psychiatrists and psychologists can use either or the DSM-4 or 5, they're both considered valid in New Zealand. Now, oh, I need a tissue, just a minute. Very nice. Anyway, the reason why I would rather say clinically significant features, and that's since childhood and actually more prominently in childhood, is, even though it's a mouthful if it comes up, is because autistic, the word autistic, has been watered down so much that it is just now a whole bunch of social media influencers who, some by their own admission, had nothing going on their entire lives for decades until they got like a midlife burnout from parenting, which is very stressful to be a parent, or a stressful career, which typically involved dealing with tons of people. Then these ones become very popular on social media, whereas the ones who I believe are authentic get hardly noticed at all. It's an absolute joke. And why I have said something about this is because these people are making money out of it, and I mean, they call it their careers, but they're spreading misinformation along the way. Like one person, for example, I think I blended that okay. Just a little bit of foundation just to cover up my aging skin. I'm in my 50s, by the way. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, one person, they all claim to never have meltdowns and shit. And then they suddenly decide that they're an expert on it. I mean, what a load of fucking shit. So, and then they say that things like meltdowns and shutdowns are exactly the same thing. They're not. Then they try to say, oh, maybe, I'm not sure if I had one, maybe a panic attack is one, or anxiety, or, and then there's that labelling everything that what autism originally was, which was communication and social impairments. They label that all as autism. So they have more in common with what they call neurotypicals than they do with what is called classic autism. In the DSM-4 there were two, well, it was listed under pervasive developmental disorders, not autism. So there was autistic disorder, there was Asperger's syndrome, and then there was PDD, NOS, which I'm diagnosed with. PDD, NOS is the category for people that had features but didn't fit either of the other two categories. Now, so some things could be more severe and some things milder, and overall, generally, most people diagnosed PDD, NOS would be subthreshold to ASD, which is what my understanding of it. Now, I got asked this question, I got told so many times, you're autistic, you're autistic, you're autistic, and I used to actually call myself that. Now, I'm not even looking in the mirror, am I? Let's see how much I stuck on. The thing is, I actually have multiple diagnoses, so why should I pick out and make that one to be an identity? Then people will go, but you've made bipolar your identity. No, I haven't. You have to name your channel something. I decided to pick the most stigmatized diagnosis of bipolar affective disorder type 1, it's called, which is a very severe form of bipolar disorder. And you could probably argue that my mood is a little bit elevated at the moment, which is why I'm talking so much, compared to not talking at all. I was mute as a child, so this is some of my features, which can get put down to, just remember which one I dipped it into. They can be put down to social anxiety disorder, which I'm also diagnosed with. It can also be put to PTSD, which is actually my primary diagnosis. Oh, I'm getting a bit bright here. I've picked out some bright clothes today, a bright top, because I have to be able to move. They are medical conditions, not a whole. The two in particular that everyone's going for is ADHD and autism, which then they're trying to say it's not even autism spectrum disorder anymore because we don't like the word disorder. We shouldn't be called disordered, blah, blah, blah. This is all, it's like a freaking cult. And I'll tell you how else it's like a cult. It's because, for example, my channel name that I chose, because I wanted to highlight the most stigmatized diagnosis that I have, but also other mental health issues, etc. People say to me, basically, I'm not welcome to talk about autism unless I call myself autistic. I am not kidding you. This is what they say. If you call yourself autistic, then you're allowed, otherwise stay away from our community. I put that in my memoir. I wrote a memoir, which I only make peanuts for my self-published books, by the way. It's not like a great big profiting venture. And I haven't accepted any donations, no Patreon and all that shit. I wrote a memoir, which is basically to process some stuff, but I actually added in, trying not to label what the politics was. I started it off with the whole people going, oh, but you're autistic. You have to identify as such. One of the main reasons why I chose not to call myself autistic or not is actually to protest against all of this bullshit, labelling, identities, gone completely nuts. It's like the people that said to me, you have to call yourself, you're a white woman. Well, I'm actually not. I'm a mixed race, and I don't even like that term. I'm Māori-European, which some people confused for Italian. I have not a drop of Italian blood in me. So, and if you want to go skin colourish based, you can say that I'm brown. I mean, it depends on if I've been in the sun much or not. Avoiding it a lot these days. I had a lot of sun exposure as a child, so that's why I had the skin cancer, unfortunately. Horrible surgery. Now, some of my childhood features don't really affect me as much now. I mean, I cope with avoidance. I don't see people much. So getting out of the house for work is one way. So everything on that side, I've only got my lips. I've got wonky lips now. Unfortunately, they had to cut like that much of my lip out. Now, what's it saying? I've got a list here because I have memory impairments, which is to do with a mental injury, which is the main medical condition I have, that the label that the PTSD and the bipolar disorder come under, that is most of my impairment, which gives me the supports. The PDD and OS as an adult diagnosis is basically useless. I knew some kids when my son was diagnosed Asperger's as a child who did get supports, but then they changed everything in 2013. A little bit of this stuff on. I'm really fussy about makeup, by the way, and that's purely because of sensory. So it has to be, you know, not tasteful, full, not feel too thick. So that's my makeup done. So anyway, let's have a look here. So the bad actors profiting, it really pisses me off because of the misinformation and then making money out of this shit. And I'm really good at spotting inconsistencies. So these people will at times admit that they've actually never been assessed, or admit that they went and sought out a neurodiversity affirming assessor, so it's always biased from the start, or they will admit that they actually passed as neurotypical for decades. No childhood. They wouldn't have been diagnosed in childhood. Now with me, I was a child in the 70s and 80s. So I was born in the early 70s. Now I had mutism for 5 years, including starting school. Now, you know, retrospectively, they can put that, the clinicians have said it could be any of social anxiety, PTSD, it could be autism spectrum features, it could be a combination. Now, I could speak at home, but sometimes I didn't. Now, it wasn't a choice, so I don't actually like the word selective mutism. I just call it mutism personally. I still have it sometimes as an adult. It's definitely to do with stress and trauma triggers, to shutdowns and dissociation links, which is PTSD stuff. Now, the other thing is that I had things like that were very odd, and it was commented on by the teachers. So it's going to be, even if they don't know, and because those diagnostic labels didn't exist, some of them, until much later. They commented on about, oh, she doesn't speak, which was unusual, and it was just a known thing in my family. When my dad would take to introduce to someone new, oh, she's just not going to speak. Like he already knows in advance, and it was dismissed as just being shy. And the other thing that was a bit unusual, peculiar apparently, was I didn't go out to play with the children. I'd stay inside and just do my work quietly as a young child, and didn't take part in group discussions, speeches in front of the class. And even when I got to high school and we had to do speeches, I would talk really fast because I was really anxious about it. And when I did try to speak, I'd get, you know, criticised and scolded, and I've been criticised for my speech all my life. Now, so those things like the social anxiety still meet criteria for diagnosis, but it's actually considered to be mild currently. Otherwise, I wouldn't even been talking on this freaking video, would I? Now, so I have multiple diagnoses. It's a complex presentation. It's been a frustrating process. But the thing is that the autism isn't even my primary issue. It's actually the mental injury, and that is what allows me to get a benefit. That is what gets me the therapy that I've been having therapy for 5 years. Some of the other diagnoses, including fibromyalgia, you may as well call it useless. I mean, I always thought that fibromyalgia was a useless diagnosis, although it's very high comorbidity with PTSD. So I'd never even heard of it before I was diagnosed with it. So some people were seeking that out because there's no confirmation tests where it's like rule out. You can do tests that rule out arthritis. Now, the identity politics has completely gone mad, and that's not only to do with this area, to do with diagnoses. It is also to do with just a whole bunch of other shit, and it has become very trendy to opt into something you can easily opt out of again, because there's no definitive proof. If you're not a clear-cut case. Like, I am not a clear-cut case with the autism features. It's more blurry, and they could be explained away by other diagnoses. There's no rule-out blood tests for any of this. It is looking from the outside, and all of these people saying that, oh, it's an internalized experience and you can't see it on the outside, that's a load of shit. If it's like that, it's probably mild anxiety, if anything, or just wanting some attention because they didn't get enough in childhood or something. Now, this whole other thing to do with identity politics, which I mentioned in my memoir, which I don't even know if I remember just saying the title. It's called Bipolar Courage. Ironically, I didn't even think of writing a book at the time till, you know, a few years later. Bipolar Courage, are you sure you're not autistic? That's the subtitle, is what Maxwell, I've called him, asked me. Now, Maxwell is a man that I met on the advocacy journey, and another advocate, and he was diagnosed Asperger's syndrome. And I guess I had more patience with him because with my son, for example, but he could be really, really annoying, but he was also very clever. And anyway, well, after we had a bit of an argument, he said, are you sure you're not autistic? And anyway, I wanted to keep the memoir alive, but I did mention the bullying, but I didn't detail everything about it. It was the bullying that I was subjected to, more bullying. It was freaking awful. I've only put it into one chapter and of heaps. Was really affected my mental health, and that's why one of the reasons why I backed off from making more videos is actually it just was devastating. And that's the other reason, another label I reject is neurodivergent, for the same reason, apart from that it is even more vague. It's like they've diluted these things down into non-impairing personality traits, that it doesn't mean anything anymore. And the diagnosis isn't perfect, but it's the tool that we have to try and get people support. And if it's just oh, because I want to feel validated shit, well, if you want to spend like a whole bunch of money to feel validated, go for your life. But when it's already, you know, some of these people I've seen have admitted to exaggerating and performing in their assessments, and, you know, staging a meltdown. And the word even a meltdown, like, it's not a clinical term. Closest you can get to it's probably emotional dysregulation, which goes with lots of disorders. I mean, I've had emotional dysregulation at times. I usually have my emotions shut down as a trauma response, but sometimes it's very intense. But that's usually when my mood is mixed and elevated, and I have these surges of anger and stuff like that. And anger in itself is not a bad emotion, but when you're taught that it is, you know, and you suppress emotions, that's not healthy. So a lot of these issues can be parenting, or it's a very complex topic. But anyway, I guess I wanted to say that the main reason I don't is because I've been given half a dozen diagnoses over the years. Why should I make one as a proud one? I picked the most stigmatized one a part of the label, and I don't actually call myself bipolar. So when people refer to me, oh, you're bipolar, I don't like that. I'm not bipolar. I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder. There is a difference, and I don't see it as my entire identity. Sure, it affects a lot of my life. The mental injury, I don't identify as a mental injury. I have a mental injury that was inflicted on me from harm done to me from criminal acts. Now, but that's not my identity. Some people go, oh, but you feel proud about bipolar, some strangers on the internet. Well, no, I'm highlighting. It is freaking hard. And if you do show what it's really like, you can get really badly bullied over it. And ironically, by these people preaching inclusivity. So a bunch of freaking hypocrites. So anyway, I do it because I don't want to make it my entire identity. I avoid such labels because it's been diluted down. I don't want to be associated with these people that have nothing in common with me, nothing in common with my son, because they didn't have the struggles that he did. He had to have help from special needs at school. He had to see a lot of childhood clinicians. You know, these adults that manage to swan through life and everything and have careers dealing with people and shit like that. And then they want validation later because then they finally get career burnout and a high rate career burnout career. I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry about my reading grammar. If you get an idea of how I speak, it is very, very hard for me to communicate in writing, but writing allows me to go and edit and edit and edit and edit until I have something that flows. My book, this last memoir, I haven't actually promoted it much just because I actually published it just before the same week my dad died. And I did, however, enter into an international award. It won a red ribbon, which was 1 point off being a finalist. Was rated by the readers, a dozen readers, 4 stars out of 5, which I think is pretty good. You know, it's not going to be the most brilliant book in the world. You know, I'm writing with significant disabilities, for example, but they did all enjoy the book and say the reason I was awarded a red ribbon was because they said that they enjoyed it and would like to read it. I have tried to keep the real heavy and difficult because handling a very difficult topic. I try to keep it light. It's mainly about the relationship with Maxwell. The way, because everything is so public online, some people, if I gave certain information, would work out who he is and some of the other characters in it. I've just made things vague for disguise by just not saying which country and a few of the specifics about them that were widely known in certain circles, just so I feel like I had more freedom to tell how I felt about things. So anyway, I don't know how many more videos I'll make. I don't know. I thought that I quit last year. I was so over it. I'm so sick of it and burnt out and everything. But I'm trying to focus more on my art, but even that I can't do full time. It's just it's a hobby that I've turned into a little business because, you know, offering my art for sale locally, but it doesn't mean that people go and buy it or anything. So doing my little projects, you know, like my writing and my art, just helps give me a sense of meaning and purpose and just having a voice. So some stranger today was saying, you know, trying to argue with me. I'm trying to avoid wasting my time with these stupid arguments, but anyway, they argue with me and then they say basically, that's it, I don't want to hear back. And it's like, so I'll reply back because I thought, well, if they're going to make accusations or clear things publicly, you know, on social media, on YouTube specifically, this particular one. So I reply back and then they go, I told you not to reply back to me. And I said, well, you know, you... why don't you practice what you preach? Because in trying to control whether I reply back or not, I mean, you commented back to me. So, you know, it's so childish. It's like the whole having the last word, which is what my mum used to say about me. So anyway, that is the main reasons why I don't identify as autistic, even though I used to for years, because the whole thing's been turned into just a joke, honestly. The online influencers are responsible for doing this, and then there are some psychologists who have jumped into this bandwagon. Really, really disappointed when I heard about one that was actually, I won't say who he is, but he used to be considered an expert. You probably work out who he was, but some of his earlier stuff actually helped with helping with figure out what was going on with my son, you know, when he was a child, to help figure out. And then he was assessed at school, and then he was assessed by clinicians, etc. But then he's still jumping on this whole bandwagon business. But anyway, you know, just because then it gets him popular, I don't care for popularity. I've never been popular. I don't care to be popular. But I think it is important to be able to have your voice, and even if you don't agree with each other, there can be ways of, you know, it's a cult-like mentality when everyone has to believe the same thing, otherwise you're out kind of thing. Anyway, thanks.